And I got most of my education on the terrace. There were two terraces. One was Eshelman Hall, and the other was when they built the student union. And I would spend 2 or 3 hours a day. And then, but at the same time, if you talk about influences on my life, that's when I met the Nobel Prize winners. And I worked for one, Alvarez. And Mary Gell-Mann would come up from Caltech and talk about quarks and his stuff. That was the second one. And then I had one who taught chemistry, and Edward Teller, I knew, the guy, the father of the H-bomb. And he was very complex, and he was not a nice guy. But I do think we needed to develop the H-bomb. I think that's what ended all the big wars. Not the atom bomb, but the H-bomb. No one ever, we will never, and Russia will never fight each other. And China will not. And that's why even if we have spats, that's all they are. And it's very hard for people to understand that such weapons. I also met Linus Pauling because I was very active in the test ban treaty. And because of my superior innate orienteering skills, I had to lead him to the place where the protest was going on. So we spent a half an hour together. I also knew Glenn T. Seaborg, the president, not the president, but the chancellor, and he has an element named after him, Seaborgium. And he was the chancellor, and I got to know him over the free speech movement, which I was the founder. So I would say equally important to the young people in my life, it was the old people, the adults that were really very central to my social life. Always, all in my whole life, adults, outside adults, since I'm about 11. Not my parents, but other adults. Parents of my friends. Joanne's father had a big impact on me because of his social activism of saving all these people. And I realized you can just do what you do. You don't have to worry about it. And within 5 minutes, I had convinced Glenn T. Seaborg that that they had to respect students inviting whoever they wanted on campus, and that the police should have nothing to say about it. I pointed to the shield of the University of California, and in the bottom it says, "Let there be light." Like Harvard, it's Veritas. Same, right? And if anybody wanted to ban a speaker, now it's the left wing that wants to ban speakers, right? And I would fight them on it also. I never allow anybody to silence anybody. That's why I don't censor any articles in my journals, ever, even if I totally disagree. It's not my job. Anyway, I did have some fabulous professors at Berkeley. An early critic of the Vietnam War, remember this is 1959, who said, "We don't understand Vietnam, we don't belong fooling around there." Where he wrote a book called The Ugly American. It reads today like a criticism of U.S. policy. It's as up to date today as it was when it was written. We just don't understand other cultures and what it takes to interfere. We knew, but that's the Powell policy. But I knew many more Nobel Prize winners, and they really had a huge effect on me because they again told me not to listen to other people, that you have to think things out for yourself. And socially, I was always the leader. I had a saying about the left wing, in Slate and at Columbia, I always brought the right wing in. I always got along with conservatives and said, look, you have a stake in free speech. And they wanted to protest Konrad Adenauer, who was the German chancellor. And I said, you can't do this. You can't be arguing for free speech in one hand and then protest and try to disrupt somebody else. You just can't do it. And what Larry Kohlberg later told me was that was a good example of coordinating rights and duties at a systematic stage. Remember, I'm a sophomore, and I'm carrying it out, not just talking. All right? And we were at a meeting, and I said, everybody, we had a line. I said, anybody who, is going to go with me and support allowing Adenauer to speak across the line. And slowly everybody crossed the line. And so the idea of confronting people was very much part of my social life. And I tell the story about when I went to these left-wing parties, which Joanne had friends at. And that's how I met my good friend Lamont Young, was his girlfriend, who's Diane Wachowski, who's a very famous artist, lived in this building that I named the Tenement. And you go back today, and they still call it the Tenement. And I was always making up funny names for things that stuck. So social change is about just changing things, just doing it. Ludwig's fountain, which was this dog who used to hang out in this fountain, that died out. But most things that I do stick. Anyway, I used to say every time I'd go to a party at this place, I'd say I have to wear boots because I don't want to get the splinter groups in my feet. And of course, who I hated the most were the Maoists and the Trotskyites, because they were absolutely antithetical to discussion. And I still hate the Chinese. You can't have a website in China. And they think that it's free, that doesn't cost them anything. I was pointing out to this woman in the hospital, they have no Nobel Prize winners because of it. And I was trying to tell you guys that being practical means you never get anything done, ever. But I would say my social life was half adults and half contemporaries. But I always had to solve everybody's problems. And it was nothing for me to do. I don't know why, but it was obvious. And one of my good friends, Brian Kershofsky, his name was Cass. He sells natural products now. He was always a little crazy, but I like him. We have a good time together. So I don't really ever stand in judgment of people. I don't like what they do, but I was always accepting of it was never an issue. Oh, I did go to the Unitarian Church 3 times. And that was the last time I had anything to do with religion. But I was a member of Stiles Hall, which was another social group. And I knew a lot of women in sororities. And I got along fine. We would work together. I was always able to work with diverse people. And at Columbia, I was a strike leader. And Columbia strike, well, I mean, the number of innovative, disruptive things I've engaged in my life is pretty endless. To this day, right? Our article on Stage 16 is pretty disruptive. It attacks, and I'm willing to go forward with it even though we don't understand it, right? All right. What more questions? I did my social life. I have gotten. I'll tell you that. But I did get every girlfriend pregnant. Every girlfriend I ever had. Even no matter what kind of birth control. 4 at least.
Wow.
And I never. And Patty and I had 4 kids, one of which died, and we call her Ms. Carrie. And then the other one was called A, Indian name, A. Board. So
Do you have any other kids?
Yes. Well, you know Nick and Lucas.
Do you have any other ones though?
That alive? No.
Yeah.
No. 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 Huh?
You meant to say 3.
What?
You said 4, you meant to say 3.
No. A. Board and Miss Carrie.
Oh, okay.
That's 4. Patty and I met. We know the room. It was the social hour for ABBA, for Division 25 at APA. I don't remember the year. I think it was 69 or 70 in Washington, D.C. at the Sheraton. It was in the basement. I remember the room. It was during the social hour. Her mother was giving a talk on teaching of psychology in high school, and Patty came along. And as I have no inhibition, I was teaching a course at NYU on behavior analysis, and she said that she was going to be a student. And so I said, take my course. And she was by far and away the best student. But I have a friend, Richard Waldstein, from that period, and we're still very good friends. He's on the board of DARE, and he's a very wealthy, very good Gestalt therapist, and he works with leaders. And we, at that time, I was.
Did you start dating Patty when she was your student?
Absolutely not. Absolutely against my morals. I would never do that. And then she worked at the DARE school, and I wouldn't go out with her then. And after that ended, I was living with a girl, a woman, who was somewhat borderline. And she would cheat on me. And I was okay, but after a while, you know.
You were okay with it?
Yes, I was.
Why?
It didn't matter to me, but I did mind when she would leave for an extended period of time. And I thought the guys were really jerks. They were all dead, by the way. They all died. Plane crashes. Both of them. And that scared me. And that really ended the relationship, the fact that they crashed planes. And she was fooling around with them. And I just decided, I don't remember. I think I went over to Patty's house twice. She lived on 96th Street. I'd have to ask her. I don't remember the details. And I asked her out. And guess where our first date was?
Where?
Cape Cod.
Where?
Head of the meadow in Truro. You know where Truro is?
Is that way out there?
Way up.
Okay.
I have pictures of it, but it's the.
What'd you
it's-
do on your first date?
What'd we do? We made out on the beach. And then we slept together at night. And we never were separated ever again. Except for exigencies. No, but I knew her really well. Her mother lived downstairs where Lucas lives. I took care of her mother, and so did she. Had a long, long, painful death. What else you want to know?
I have to stop this for a second because the camera's about to die.